Okay, so tell me a little bit about your experience and what you actually do in regards to the metal industry. Maybe a little bit about your background.
Been in the steel industry about 10 years, welding, fabrication. Been around guns about the same amount of time. Everything, CNC, cutting, operations, welding, basic metallurgist background.
Why is this specific target better than anything else that's out on the market? What sets Barker Tactical Systems apart from everybody else?
When it comes to shooting targets, it's an investment. You want to know what you're buying. You're obviously shooting it with a projectile at a very high velocity. You want to know what you're buying is going to last. Out there on the market right now, there's a lot of really expensive target platforms that are made of subpar steel. Basically, the hardness of steel is what's going to play into how long that target lasts based on the Burnell number. Targets that Barker makes, very high Burnell factor, very hard. They'll fragment around immediately. What you get into with the cheaper targets also, not only longevity issues, you run into a lot of splashback, catching a lot of steel shrapnel off of the target, a lot of full metal jacket if that's what you shoot, coming back at you. You get eye damage, gets under your skin. It can be dangerous, especially when you get into the softer, mild steel. Everything Barker sells is all an AR steel, which is an armor plate. You'd find it in the doors and floors of, say, like a Blackhawk or a Humvee, something like that.
Okay, so let's talk about also too the manufacturing. Since you've got a lot of experience in metal, I guess that would be your metallurgy. What actually separates this target, I guess, in its manufacturing process that would be different from, let's say, its competition?
I got you. A lot of targets you'll buy, a lot of very expensive targets you'll buy are, even if they're high quality steel, they're cut with a cheaper process, whether it be a plasma cut, which is an electric process, or even a torch flame cut. What you get there is you get a work hardening around that edge. Basically, you have a heat affected zone from that 2500 degree flame cutting the part out, and you end up with either a more brittle or a softer edge. You'll end up with a target that chips, frags, shrinks over time from shooting. We cut all these with a water jet, and that's high pressure water and garnet, basically blasted at 94,000 psi, leaving about Mach 3, cuts these out. The part will never get much above ambient temperature, so what you end up with is a target that is never, the molecular structure of that target is exactly as it was produced off the original sheet. So you don't have that work hardening, you don't have that stress in the target, no deformation, none of that. It's the same steel from sheet to finished product.
Okay, now for people who don't know what shrinking is, can you maybe just elaborate a little bit on what actually shrinking of the target is?
Yeah. Some of the targets I've shot in the past, some that I actually own and have acquired, over time, let's say you put 5,000 rounds a year on the range, so your steel targets, and you're not going to get center mass hits every time. You're going to get edge hits, and what you end up with is just a slow erosion of your target. You on a subpar quality target, whether it be poor steel, regular mild steel, non-AR, or just a flame cut target, you end up with a target that may start off at 6x12 or whatever it may be, and end up with a 6x6 target by the time it's done, just from that erosion happening over time. And you pay a decent price for these steel targets, you expect them to last, and I would expect this target to, my kids to have this target,
I've actually heard about targets, metal targets bending over time. Can you maybe elaborate maybe what that actually is and what is the benefit of actually having this particular setup?
You will eventually, even though the Burnell number or the hardness of this steel is quite high, it's still steel. It's not a, still has some yield strength to it, so it's gonna still bend. It's still formed to some extent, especially when you're putting 5,000 rounds on something. It's eventually gonna start to deform a little bit. Now, not necessarily dent, but just bend from the impact. So something that you can do to increase that life of, say, this Barker target is just occasionally rotate this thing. If you start to notice a little crown in it or a little bit of bending, just rotate it 180. Yeah, you're not going to have your BT facing forward anymore, but you're going to extend the lifespan of your probably double the lifespan of that target. Honestly.
Okay, now when you say BT, you're just referring to the actual cut here at the very top?
Barker attack. That's something that Jarrett does in his targets that separates him from a lot of the competition. Is just a little bit extra there for you.
All right, guys, so here at my buddy's farm, just showed up with the target here from Barker Tactical Systems, and going to be putting this through its paces to see what this thing can do. Alright, so that concludes the shooting, and really this is the first opportunity that I've had to do my after-action report, so I apologize for the lighting. I'm here in my garage. I just got off from work. So a couple things. I don't have a lot of experience shooting at steel targets, okay? So I may be just like you, starting out considering, what kind of targets do I need to buy? Now, I have been down to Georgia and shot Barker tactical targets many times, and you can look at those reviews, and I'll make sure to post a link in those to Advanced Handgun 2 and Advanced Handgun 3. There's some footage there of not only myself but the class shooting at those steel targets. All of those targets, including this one, are all made out of the same AR rating. Now, and they've been in service for years, okay, so hundreds of thousands of hours of their police officers training. They also do concealed weapon permit classes. They do advanced training, which is what I've taken. They do their SWAT team training there. They do sniper training there. So just about everything that you can imagine, including even state competitions, they do there. So these things, their targets have had hundreds upon thousands of of rounds put on them, and they're still in service to this day. So what I would look at as an individual where money is limited. Okay, I've got a family, so yeah, I just can't go out and just spend $600-700 on a bunch of targets. So if you're like me, which most Americans are, you want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely. Shooting steel core penetrator at any type of armor at all is going to damage that target, okay? I was shooting within 20 yards, 62 grain steel core penetrator, and I feel comfortable and safe doing that just because I've done that before at those courses, okay, in a safe environment. These targets are designed to do exactly what they are intended to do, and that's to keep you safe. One thing that I was actually really surprised with is a shotgun round. Now, if you'll notice in that video when I was shooting the KSG, it had a lot of recoil. That was actually the first time I'd ever shot it. I just picked it up about a week prior to that, and the first round that I shot out of that was this PDX Winchester Defender round. So give you guys a look at that actual slug. That is just absolutely nasty. It actually had such an impact on the target that it actually knocked it completely down after the second shot, which, given the size of the base, which you saw, that's actually pretty impressive. So this thing is a nasty, nasty round. I also too want to make sure to give you some up close look here at the 2x4. So you can see how the rounds, after they impact the steel plate, how they absolutely disintegrate, and any amount of remaining pieces of shrapnel just comes down. And of course you can see where it's actually ate into that 2x4 there. Alright, so this thing does exactly what it's supposed to do. Okay, now a couple things. Let me point out that if you get a lot of crosswinds where you guys are at, this bracket here is just a little bit larger than a 2x4, okay? So what you can actually do, if you're getting a lot of crosswinds and a lot of movement, you can take some wooden shims and just tap those down inside of here, and that will stabilize that a lot better. Also too, while we're down here looking at this base, you can see some of the basically the markings on here where the shrapnel came down and hit the base. One thing that I realized is that I did not have a stable platform. I was shooting on uneven terrain. I'm at a farm, so one of the things that I had was a lot of movement, okay, and wobble, because this thing is level, and of course the ground is not. One thing that some of my friends were telling me, which was actually a great point, I want to make sure that I mention that to you guys, is those U-bolts that you can buy at any hardware store. You can take those U-bolts and just simply hammer those into the ground, and that will give you a lot more stability on uneven terrain. So anyway, just wanted to make sure I mentioned that real quick. Alright, so all in all, had an absolute blast shooting this video, okay? Not only did I have a blast shooting this target, I had a blast hanging out with some of my friends.
Was able to bring my son along for the video review, and it was so cool to watch his reaction as he was able to hear for the first time his audible feedback from shooting at a distance or shooting at a target long distance. So, you know, this is something that's not only going to help me in my training regiment become a faster shooter, this is going to help me work with him down the road as well, okay? So with that being said, if you've been in the shooting industry long enough, then you'll probably have heard that shooting steel will make you fast, shooting paper will keep you honest. And that's absolutely the case. So if you are considering steel into your training regimen, make sure that you always go back to your foundation, which is punching holes, as we like to call it, because that will check your accuracy. And as you know, accuracy is final. So if you are interested in whether it's getting a price check or a price quote on just one of these targets, or even 50 for your own training facility or department, make sure that you reach out to Barker Tactical Systems. I will post that information to contact them in the video description down below. Just click on the See More tab. I promise you that they will give you the best deal that they can. Just mention that you saw this video on YouTube. And anyway, until next time, guys, be safe out there, and we'll see you on the next one.